Welcome to the Leadership Levers Podcast. I'm your host, Will Gladhart, CMO at the Culture Think Tank. Our Culture Think Tank community is committed to advancing workplace culture and well-being. We are a virtual hub for authors, investors, leaders, managers, and employees worldwide to connect, engage in candid discussions, share ideas, and explore resources for cultivating a healthy work environment. We're here today to learn about the actions leaders have taken to address cultural change. Our guest today is Craig Mason, CEO of Raise Health. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much, Will. I'm excited to be here.
I thought we would start by having you share with our audience a bit about yourself, your organization, and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent the better part of 15 years as a health tech innovator here in Kansas City, working everywhere from the largest of the large, now leading a startup of just a couple of people. So I've seen everything from Fortune 10 to less than 10 people, but have always had a passion for bringing enthusiasm, curiosity, and delivery and impacts into the healthcare tech space.
Awesome. Well, we'll be discussing 3 questions today. As a warm-up to start our conversation, would you share why you believe a healthy culture is critical?
I think that culture truly is the personality and measuring stick of an organization. Are you curious? Are you conservative? Are you operations over everything? Are you impact over everything? Candid play, all these different things define the heartbeat of how the organization operates. And most importantly, how people survive or thrive inside that organization. Because we spend so much time in these organizations, it has to align with who we are. Otherwise, there's friction of that culture. It also determines, how an organization survives big tests in the test of time.
Absolutely. So, what do you see as the biggest challenge leaders face when addressing cultural change within an organization, or, what have you specifically faced in your own or another organization?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing really is resistance to change. Like we're inherently creatures of habit, and the majority of the time of our that we're awake is at work. So our personality, our identity, and our ability to grow are inherently intertwined with this corporate culture. I had an opportunity to work at a very large health tech organization and got an opportunity to spend time leading a culture initiative. And we did a large survey of our employees. And one of the things that we realized in that is that the culture that the people defined was based off of who they worked with. So the clients, if they worked externally, most of the time they started to identify the culture of our company with the culture of the client, or if they were internal, the culture of the micro org that they worked in. So it really was a ton of microcultures, and we realized that you have to reinforce and articulate what it is. But then when you make a big change, how do you help people understand and really embrace that? So when I was at this organization, we had the unfortunate passing of the founder and CEO, who was a visionary leader and impactor in the health tech space. And the new CEO that was selected was very much an operations focused person. So we went from a culture of big vision and impact over everything to operational efficiency, ensuring profitability, and process over everything. Very hard change in a culture. But we had to change our mindset, our responsibilities. And that first several months was really hard because people were so used to weeks, months, years of this behavior. But the leadership started to articulate the things behind why we were doing this and how it helped us achieve things. So to get that resistance realigned to the pulse of how the organization was going to continue to succeed.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you bring, Craig, about the behavior and the action, but the communication of the leader specifically impacts and ripples through the organization. But what you described is even more challenging because having those microcosms or those microcultures, both internal and external, I mean, they all operate very differently. They communicate differently, and those grew out of some sort of inherent culture that developed, and then basically having a realignment across the board to a very different guiding principle. Yeah, that's a really hard change. So you kind of articulated it a little bit, but what do you think leaders can do to address the challenges they are facing, or what is something that you've done?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really tying it back to the why. What is the vision, the mission behind the reason that the company exists in the first place? And then, what is the purpose? How are we serving our customers? So like once people understand the why of this, the thing that you're working on, then they're more prepared to understand the what and the how tied to what they're doing. So being able to articulate how the status quo is detrimental to achieving that why, that vision, that mission, and the customer need, and how this new culture and this new way of doing things helps us achieve this aspiration, this vision, and the delivery that we're focused on. It starts to create that bond and that connection from what you're used to of the, I signed up to work here because of X, and I was really passionate and believed in it. And in order to still achieve that in my role and to help the organization achieve that, if I stay the way that I am, it's detrimental. But if I embrace this, then it helps me. And so it really starts to realign some of the perspectives that we have as to, hey, in order for us to succeed, we have to be invested in this change to ultimately go and achieve the outcomes that we've always signed up for as an organization.
I really appreciate that viewpoint, especially thinking about the different components and elements that it takes to actually start moving those pieces forward. I love what you shared today. Is there anything else you'd like to share or add, or any insights for other leaders?
It's hard every day. And it isn't something, it's like your yard. You don't just set it and forget it. It either thrives when you fertilize it and when you water it, or it dies out and gets covered in weeds, with weeds if you ignore it. So it is a constant thing that you have to manicure and pay attention to, for it to be what you want it to be. You can't just say, oh, great, it's perfect and let it go. So it really is one of those things that the more you think about the culture, how people are thriving, how to make things easy for them, and what you believe the pulse of the organization is, and continue to monitor that. Get in the weeds with them and understand what it is that to help get rid of those weeds so that you can all collectively have skin in the game to go achieve it.
That's a great example. I think we can all envision exactly what it looks like, or a perfectly manicured golf course, or, we've all driven by the lawn that, well, no one took care of. So, there's a dramatic difference, but relating that to culture and the culture journey is really fantastic. So, Craig, I've enjoyed having you on our Leadership Lovers podcast. Thank you so much for your insights.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on the Leadership Lovers podcast. You may find all our Leadership Lovers episodes in our Culture Think Tank community at www.culturethinktank.ai. Join the community at no charge and tune in weekly as we invite leaders to share their experience in strengthening culture one action at a time.